The most important thing about being real isn't what you're made of, it's about what's in your heart. Those words sum up the message of the Blue Fairy in the classic story of Pinocchio, which is our theme for this service. So what is in your heart today? Whether in person or on Zoom, a warm welcome to everyone who is gathered here for worship today, here upon the traditional land of the Chumash peoples. May we always remember this and all First Nation peoples and pledge to steward their land, honor their history and their culture. I'm Kristen, the Blue Fairy's grandmother, and it's always a pleasure to assist Reverend Jonathan with another one of his thought-provoking homilies. Take a moment to center here and enter into our sacred time of worship, which begins each Sunday with the lighting of our chalice. I'll light our communal chalice here, and those at home may light theirs. So let's join our voices together, saying the words for the chalice lighting. They are in your order of service and on the screens. The element of fire represents veracity, authenticity, and vitality. We are the light, bound by strong truth-telling, our daring to be authentic with one another, and the vitality we sustain in meeting together.
Welcome to this house of memory and celebration. For our call to worship, I have a poem by Billy Collins, poet laureate, wonderful writer. This is the moment we sort of transition, cross the threshold into reflection, into worship. It's called Love. It doesn't seem at the beginning to have much to do with being in a house of worship, but wait. The boy at the far end of the train car kept looking behind him as if he were afraid or expecting someone. And then she appeared in the glass door of the forward car, and he rose and opened the door and let her in. And she entered the car carrying a large black case in the unmistakable shape of a cello. She looked like an angel, with a high forehead and somber eyes, and her hair was tied up behind her neck with a black bow. And because of all that, he seemed a little awkward in his happiness to see her, whereas she was simply there, perfectly existing as a creature with a soft face who played cello. And the reason I am writing this on the back of a manila envelope now that they have left the train together is to tell you that when she turned to lift the large, delicate cello onto the overhead rack, I saw him looking up at her and what she was doing, the way the eyes of the saints are painted when they are looking up at God, when he is doing something remarkable, something that identifies him as God.
For a meditation, I have a short piece by William Stafford. It's called Just Thinking. Got up on a cool morning, leaned out a window, no cloud, no wind, air that flowers held for a while, some dove somewhere. Been on probation most of my life, and the rest of my life been condemned. So these moments count for a lot. Peace, you know? let the bucket of memory down into the well. Bring it up. Cool, cool minutes. No one stirring, no plans, just being there. This is what the whole thing is about.
When you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. Anything your heart desires will come to you. Well, whether it's true or not, it's a poem of longing. What do we yearn for? Our yearning will lead to learning. It pulls us into an initiatory adventure. At least it does in this song. It's the yearning of a poor carpenter woodworker. He does carvings and such to get by, and he's lonely. He has no wife, he has no children, so he carves himself a puppet. You know the story. And a son, a little boy. He names him Pinocchio, which means little wooden head or something, and has affection for this creation. And that night he wishes on a star. There's the openness to something transcendent, who knows? It's bedtime, and it's almost like a prayer. It's in the dreamscape, it's close to the dream time, and maybe it's a dream or maybe it's real, but the blue fairy comes and gives life to the little boy, who speaks. Am I a real boy? No, you're still a puppet, but you're alive, sort of an in-between place. And maybe we start in our lives not quite fully formed, alive, but not quite real yet. It takes some doing. In the story, the mentor figure, the blue fairy, who is the fairy godmother, the Glinda of this tale, says, you must be brave, truthful, and unselfish. You need to know the difference between right and wrong to be authentic. Further growth is necessary before we can claim our full humanity. The story is a spiritual allegory. Puppet perhaps represents a person not yet autonomous, not yet self-determined, still pulled by strings. Must become real, not through external validation, but through some kind of internal transformation. There's a helper, Jiminy Cricket, a little companion, a conscience. He gets a title, the Lord High Keeper of the Knowledge of Right and Wrong. Very fancy. Takes a little doing. Do I get a badge, he says? Maybe later, we'll see. That is to say, the mentor and the guides and the companions will all go through some development in a story. It's not just the seeker who benefits. Everyone gets in on the treasures. There are other songs, but when Geppetto, the father figure, wakes up, he is overjoyed. Here is the son. Well, it's still a puppet, but it can talk, and it's the companionship. It is out of the longing of the heart of that figure that things are born, like a parent's longing to have a child, which is where children come from, right? We have that in the story, but it's in this fanciful form. At great sacrifice to the poor woodcarver, the little animated puppet is sent off to school. He has so little money, he has to buy a book, and there's some fee, manages, and a bright shiny apple for the teacher, and off little Pinocchio goes. Doesn't get very far down the road. There's a couple of tricksters. There's a fox and a cat. The fox is named Honest John, which gives us a clue what we're dealing with here. And the cat is named Gideon, little biblical reference there. I don't know what that is. And they see this walking puppet and chat with him for a moment. They said, we can get some money out of this. We can sell a living puppet to somebody. Well, there actually is a little puppet show in town, a struggling little theatrical thing. I bet we could introduce him to show business, and now a big con goes on. You're going off to school? Oh, you haven't heard of the easy road to success? No, I'm speaking, my boy, of the theater. Bright lights, music, applause, fame, and with that personality, that profile, that physique, why, he's a natural born actor, eh, Giddy? But I'm going, he says, he's going to go to school. That's what he's been told. And, oh, you're going straight to the top, boy. Why, I can see your name in lights, 6 feet high. But we're wasting precious time. Come to the theater. All right, this is the trickster energy. One of the most charming parts of the story is the sinister schemer. The con is always fascinating storytelling. The trickster, the archetype, in Jung's opinion, plays a vital role in awakening the soul. Pinocchio begins as a puppet. This is our own early stages, perhaps, but it's an archetypal energy that shows up a number of different places in the story. Pinocchio himself is a bit of a trickster, being a puppet who can talk. This can only happen in a story or a movie, right? And then he encounters these figures, and even the Blue Fairy, we'll meet her soon, she has made this animation possible and plays a small role throughout the story, and yet a central role. Here's the guiding thread. Here's the transcendence that can make the magic happen. The trickster is the part of us that rebels against rigidity, that questions authority, that breaks the rules to reveal deeper truths. It is the trickster's gift to shake us awake, to crack the shell of convention and let the soul breathe. I will not ask for a show of hands to see how many of you were considered the rebellious one in your family, even the black sheep. I mean, you're here, right? Okay. It isn't the story, it's a story about being a good little boy, sort of. But that's the little thing that happens at the very end of the story. I do not think that the children who loved this story for all these years and decades loved it because at the end he gets the awareness of how to be a good boy. I think they like the middle part where he's acting out. And I think the story actually argues for balance. And those who would put too much emphasis on the last few notes miss the point. We need both. We need the vitality, and then we need to be able to show up for work in the morning and pay the phone bill. They're both important, but the fun part, that's in the middle. That's where we're tempted. Okay. Pinocchio's rebellion is not just a detour, it is the path itself. His chaos, and there's considerable chaos in the story, is a cleansing fire. There is enough order. What we need is a court jester reminding us not to take ourselves too seriously. Now, this little walking puppet doesn't have much of a sense of himself yet, so he's easy prey for these con men. And sure enough, he sings the song, and Kevin played it for our prelude here, An Actor's Life for Me. A high silk hat and a silver cane, a watch of gold, a diamond chain, he goes on and on. Here's glamour, here's fame, here's wealth. The young tend to be tempted, and all of us have spent some of our energy pursuing this, and it's necessary. You need some money. I'm not sure whether fame is particularly helpful in life. You read the interviews with people that actually have fame, and they kind of wish they didn't. I know Bill Murray said, young people, you want to be rich and famous? Listen to me. Go for the rich part. Okay. Glamour is appealing if you don't know who you are. At least it's kind of something. It impresses others, or maybe a person is trying to impress themselves. And so, okay, off we go to the theater. This does not go well. Maybe you've seen this. His name is Stromboli. And, okay, we're going to make a lot of money here. Yeah, none of it's going to go to Pinocchio. And he's going to go home at the end of the day back to Geppetto. No, he gets locked up in a cage. It's an oversized bird cage. Okay, the temptations. It's a seductive illusion. This is, in Jungian language, the persona, that which we do to impress others, especially if we feel that we're not very impressive. And everybody does it. The word comes from the mask used in classical drama. We play roles. Probably have several masks. They did in the classical theater. They had a whole table of them, and the same actor would grab a different mask and come out, play a different part. We do that. Okay. I got my preacher mask on right now. I have others. You guys know me. This is not the only me, and it's not the only you. You have several different. And sometimes, you're in Trader Joe's getting some coffee and whatever, and people from two different parts of your life say hi. And you're going to try to figure out how to introduce your accountant to your friend from Live Oak. And, well, this is, because you have whole different conversations with different personae. This actor stage thing becomes a trap because it's really not the journey of the heart. There are more important things he is supposed to be doing. The choice is between external validation and inner truth. And at the moment, he's making the wrong choice. This is an initiation story. Change will happen. And at this point, Jiminy Cricket gives up on him. Well, I guess it doesn't need me anymore. What does an actor want with a conscience anyway? I love that we're hearing that line in a movie, voiced by voice actors. There's, I think, some self-consciousness in the filmmaker's part. So Geppetto starts searching for his son. He's a loving father figure. We don't see him much in the story, but he lurks, the way actual fathers do, looking out for us when we're off experimenting with life, and maybe there is a reunion someday, but there's usually a period where there's a broken heart looking for the lost, the prodigal. Finally, the blue fairy shows up, and this is where he kind of lies and and the nose starts to grow. She gives him another chance, and she gives him another nose. And the rebellion, many children kind of experimenting with lying. They discover lying, and then, oh, I can just say, and it's sort of still at a stage where there's a lot of fantasy involved. It's like, I could kind of say anything, and there is a sort of creative experiment going on, and hopefully it passes, that this is just a stage. The growing nose, which is a cliche, a little saying, a meme in our culture, if you think about it, that's losing face. And we want to be authentic, and we discover our own values and realize that truth is a better policy. This is authenticity. This is being congruent with our own values. The next episode, and there are many, and the movie only captures a few, the novel has many others, but in the film, there's a coachman in an inn, and the no-gooders there, Honest John and Gideon, are getting something to eat, and the coachman's got some money, and he says, I'm recruiting boys. Oh, what for? Well, you don't need to know that. What you need to know is you get a gold coin for every boy you turn over to me. Ooh, that's a lot of money. And so they manage to lure this. He falls for it again. Most of us fall for bad ideas more than once before we kind of get it. I'd like to think that every lesson is complete in itself, but repetition is necessary. And sure enough, in this story, this is the Fun Forever land. This is Pleasure Island. And it's attractive. There are Ferris wheels, there's rides, there's gambling, there's drinking. These are boys. There's drinking, there's smoking, there's fighting, everything a boy would want. And they sign on and they go willingly. There are kind of recruiters who get bribed to gather these boys up, but they get on the boat and they go out to this island. And if you think about it, an island is also a prison. You can't get away very easily. And in fact, something like that is happening. There is a friend of sorts, or a pal, that gets into this part of the story named Lampwick. And they have fun for a while. This is the descent part of the story. This is not pretty. This is the distractions, the addictions, whatever seems like fun but isn't very good for us. Okay, you leave your path, and it's kind of against the rules, but the important point is it ends up hurting. These things that are fun at the beginning, turn on us. And it's a lesson that most people need to learn somehow or another. This is a temptation of gratification, a place of indulgence, escape. Pinocchio is not just having fun, he's also abandoning his journey. There is something he's supposed to do with his life. The Blue Fairy sketched it out when he got vitality, and he's not doing it. He's just gambling and smoking and drinking. The spiritual path is not about rejecting joy. It's about distinguishing between fleeting gratification and lasting fulfillment. The seeker must learn to discern between them. That thing's making a little noise. I'm getting distracted. Gradually, the boys on Pleasure Island begin to vanish. They're actually turning into donkeys. They're going to be slaves, beasts of burden. It's a bad lot. Lampwick turns before Pinocchio's eyes into a braying donkey. One of the donkeys wants to go home to his mama. Well, Pinocchio doesn't actually have a mama, but he doesn't want to be here and manages to escape. He only has ears and a tail. He's only a little bit of donkey, just barely, and manages to swim away. Now, there's more to the story, but now a word from our sponsor. I've got Anne lined up to do a reading right at this part of the presentation.
Okay, commercial break. Okay, I have a piece by a writer named Margaret Haas. It's called Truant. Our high school principal wagged his finger over 2 manila folders lying on his desk, labeled with our names, my boyfriend and me, called to his office for skipping school. The day before, we ditched Latin and world history to chase shadows of clouds on a motorcycle. We roared down rural roads, through the Missouri river bottoms beyond town, wind teasing the hair on our bare heads, empty of review tests and future plans. We stopped on a dirt road to hear a meadowlark's skittish song and smell the heartbreak blossom of wild plum. Beyond leaning fence posts and barbed wire, a tractor drew straight lines across a field, unfurling its cape of blackbirds. Now, 50 years after that geography lesson of spring, I remember the words of the principal. How right he was in saying, this will become part of your permanent record. So sometimes when we go off the path, things do become part of our permanent record. The second one I want to read is one I wrote reflecting on how the story impacted me in my life. Graham told me so many times all the ways to be in trouble, until it seemed I was trouble. Even at church, a failure at confession. I identified with Pinocchio. I wanted to go to the bright land where all the food is sweets, where I would be seen as beautiful and wanted. When the donkey ears sprouted, I felt my own unworthiness, longing for escape, knowing I was destined to become a donkey. If only the blue fairy would come. Though I never spoke it, or maybe admitted it, I began to hope for the blue fairy, like something in me knowing by the way the evening sunlight lingered in forest ponds, by the way turtles appeared out of the dry grasses, by the sound of bobwhites and whippoorwills, that beyond any likelihood, some unimagined, spacious place of grace and kindness awaited, where someone saw something in me that was good and true and mattered. Perhaps many years later, she did come to me. Perhaps it was her that gave me a pen and paper, whispered my own words and the story before I knew it. Perhaps she's here now.
Meanwhile, back in our story, we're lost at sea, manage to swim home. We reconnect with Jiminy Cricket, get home, but Geppetto is not there. A little pigeon shows up, probably sent by the Blue Fairy, and explains that Geppetto and the cat and the fish have gone out to rescue. They had actually heard that Pinocchio was on Pleasure Island and tried to get out there, but got lost at sea, and maybe they're gone forever. Well, here's heartbreak. Notice how little we see the Blue Fairy in the story, but how crucial the interventions are. There's a sort of hovering presence of this particular mentor type of energy. They were actually swallowed by a whale. Little hints of Jonah here, and it's a big whale. They've been in there a long time, sort of slowly starving because they were getting by on catching fish, and there aren't any fish inside the whale that can be caught. So, okay, This is a decision on Pinocchio's part to put himself at risk to rescue Geppetto and the pets. This is the moral turning point of the story. This is where compassion, this is where heart enters it. Up to this point, a kind of immature, just seeking self-importance or self-gratification, now doing something for somebody else, somebody he cares about, his creator. He is a fatherless waif, and a temporary orphan is searching for the connection that was lost. This is also the descent part of the story. Descent into trouble, descent into the underworld, if we were being theological about it, the descent into the unconscious, if it's more psychological. They're swallowed up. And it works out. They get inside the whale, named Monstro in the Disney version, big, mean-looking whale, and find Geppetto. There's a reunion, but we're inside of a whale, and all is lost. There's not much to eat. We'll be all dead soon. There are wrecks of other ships and things in there. Pinocchio comes up with an idea. He's got this trickster energy. He said, well, we've got a way to start fire. You've got a little candle here. Let's gather up this driftwood, some of these old wrecks, and let's start a fire. Well, that'll just make Monstro mad. Maybe it'll make him sneeze. There's the trickster angle, finding some little maneuver that is unexpected that can get you where you need to go. It works. Monstro is furious, does sneeze, and they come out on a tidal wave of a huge surge of water, and now they have a very angry whale after them, which destroys their little raft, and Pinocchio takes considerable risk and swims to distract them while they get into a cave at the cliffside of the ocean there, and Monstro comes after him, ends up slamming into the cliff, but Pinocchio essentially dies in his heroism. Geppetto is able to carry him home limp and ruined from the self-sacrifice, and he's overcome his self-centeredness, and it has cost him a great deal. The Blue Fairy arrives, who's also the missing mother energy of the story. He's able to do this, the brave, truthful, unselfish qualities that it takes to become authentic, and she resurrects him, and not as a puppet, not as an animated piece of wood, but as a real boy. What has happened here is a classic death and rebirth motif that is present in all of the religions. Very important, it's representing psychologically a kind of death of ego, death of self-importance to some higher values like caring about others and generosity. He's also back from hell. He rises again. So the Blue Fairy is the spiritual dimension of the story. The story would be impossible without the presence of compassion that she represents. She's kind of mysterious, luminous. She's always backlit. She's kind of ethereal, deeply archetypal. This energy connects the conscious to the unconscious, the known to the unknown, the practical to the mystery. Ultimately, it connects us to ourselves, connects us to our deeper, larger, luminous qualities. She is the call of the soul. This is the voice that beckons us toward wholeness. She represents the grace that meets us when we are ready to claim our true selves. In wisdom stories across cultures, fairy godmothers and spiritual mentors appear at moments of crisis. They guide the seeker toward destiny. They do not remove obstacles, they illuminate the path. Fairy godmothers are not there to make life easy. They are there to remind us who we are. So we have metamorphosis. We have a log that became a marionette that becomes a real boy. He looks at Geppetto, who doesn't even know he's alive. Geppetto is essentially mourning the loss of his marionette who could talk, and why are you crying? And this is where he sees that he has a real boy. Now he has the son, which was the real longing of his heart, and there's considerable dancing in this scene in the movie. I like the dancing part of it. Celebration. On the surface, this is a story about learning to be good. On a deeper part, it's the value of the transgressive experience, that contributes to our process. We discover some of our effectiveness That's how we get into trouble. And then it's getting out of trouble that redeems Pinocchio. I mean, we could stop the movie and say, well, wait a second, you kind of caused all this trouble to begin. Well, yeah, maybe we do unconsciously cause ourselves trouble that we then have to extricate ourselves from and learn a few rules, learn some of the trials of the world, and learn to integrate our gifts. There's a star at the beginning and the end. When the Blue Fairy departs, she departs into a star, not before giving Jiminy Cricket his badge, which reads official consciousness. Official conscience. So, action steps: honor the trickster. It sneaks up on us, is not always welcome, but these moments can lead to some of our transformative lessons. The rebelliousness and mischief, well, that may resist conformity in a way that leads to wisdom. Face the shadow. What lies do we tell ourselves? What fears keep us from being more real? Bring them into the light with compassion, maybe some journaling or some reflection or spiritual direction to uncover the parts of ourselves we tend to avoid knowing about. Tell the truth about these things and other things, especially to ourselves. Practice compassionate action. Help others not out of obligation, but as a sacred offering. Love transforms both the giver and the receiver. Seek wholeness. Include all the parts of ourselves, the parts we like and the parts we're a little ashamed of. We're not seeking perfection. Embrace the flaws as part of the story. The goal is integration, not idealization. And honor the process of becoming real. Acknowledge growth. Celebrate moments of authenticity. And my closing words: Pinocchio's journey is our own. We are all recovering puppets, learning to become authentic. May we honor the trickster's wisdom, embrace the trials of transformation, walk the path towards soulful integrity. May we descend into our own depths, confront our shadows, and rise reborn in love. May we become not perfect, but true. May our stories guide us, our truths liberate us, and our hearts make us real. Namaste. Blessed be. And so it goes.